So, hello everyone. Today I have with me Dr. Raksha Jajuji, who runs a chess academy, Mind Square Chess. लोग डॉक्टर के पास जाते हैं इलाज करने के लिए, तो मुझे भी थोड़ी तकलीफ थी चेस में, तो मैं अपना चेस का इलाज करने के लिए मैं डॉक्टर जी के पास आया हूँ। एंड आज डॉक्टर हमें एंड गेम सिखाने वाले हैं, सो वेलकम डॉक्टर रक्षा जी।
Hello, hi, thank you, Mrinal, so much. तो आज जो सीरीज बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है, राइट? वी आर लर्निंग द एंड गेम्स, किंग एंड पॉन एंड गेम, राइट?
राइट राइट।
हाँ।
I mean, we have set up some positions, and like endgames
हम्म।
is the most important part of chess. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. As a chess coach, I think all the coaches they first start with endgames before going to openings and middle games. So what I जो मेरे को लगता है is that endgame is actually the most important part of chess. Although लोग को लगता होगा that it's the other way around, but trust me, endgames is the most critical part when it comes to learning chess.
ट्रू, एंड गेम्स आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। टू रीजंस। एक तो एंड गेम से यू डेवलप गुड कैलकुलेशन, गुड इमेजिनेशन दैट विल हेल्प यू इन योर मिडिल गेम एंड ओपनिंग इवेंचुअली। और दूसरा कि एंड गेम्स लोगों को अटैक आ जाएगा, कैप्चर आ जाएगा, बट व्हेन दे विल हैव वन पॉन और दे विल जस्ट हैव अ क्वीन, व्हाट टू डू एट दैट पॉइंट, दे शुड नो द करेक्ट टेक्निक. So end game is all about the technique. That's what's very important.
Yeah, so let's just straight dive into the fascinating world of endgames. In
Yeah.
this first position, it is white to move, and यहाँ पे हमें pawn ऊपर में promote करना है. We have to take our pawn to the other side of the board and promote it to any piece you want. So यहाँ पे there's a very important concept which is I call it magic square, but our doctor, our chess coach will, she is used to teaching these, so you can explain us the concept over here that कैसे, like how do you know whether the black king is going to be in time to capture the pawn or your pawn is faster?
Yeah. So to this we call it as the rule of square or Biggie square. Now you can draw a straight line from A4 to A8 and then a diagonal. So make a complete square. If the black king is in this big square, then the pawn can't promote by itself. Then you need to support the pawn. पर अगर king is biggie square के बाहर है, then we don't need a support and we can simply promote it to the queen.
Yeah, and I think one important part is that abhi it is black's move. So if black is able to reach this square or even like no either from this side or this side, then the black king will be able to capture your pawn. But in this case, of course, the black king is outside this square. Let me just draw it again because now it is your move, and since the black king is outside the square, so the pawn is going to promote. So यहाँ
Yeah,
पे I'll just quickly show it to you.
correct.
So and now we can look at the same example. Let's say that if white plays the move a3, and now
Hmm.
over here we can again draw the square, and now we see that the king is just in the, like no, just he's in time, he's
Just in
opening.
time. Correct.
So in such a scenario white will not be able to promote.
Yeah.
So now we can just
So
show it
here
again.
again, white's king is very far. That's why white can't promote. If you could support the pawn with the king, then it was possible. But alone, the pawn can't support,
Yeah,
can't promote.
so there are two ways of promoting your pawn to a queen. One is without the support of the king, like we saw in this position, and आगे we will see that how we can promote the pawn to a, like how you can promote it with the help of the king.
Okay.
So we can go to the next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so coming to this one, like what technique is it called and how do you promote such a position?
So again, this is an opposition. Here it is white to play, right? Now, key squares, there are key squares in pawn promotion. If your king is on that key square, so you can promote your own king. For example, here white's king. If black's king is taking those key squares, then it is kind of hard for you to promote the pawn. यहाँ पर our king is ahead of the pawn. Again, one very basic and important rule कि king should be ahead of the passed pawn. If your king is behind the passed pawn, you can't promote it to a queen. यहाँ पर हमारा किंग आ गया. Now we can just promote the pawn right in time. You'll go king c7 and then it's a red carpet for your pawn. No one can capture your pawn and your pawn will be protected. You'll just make it a queen.
So यहाँ पे the black king like the king is just objecting the black king, and it's like not letting the king move towards your pawn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
we can.
your opposite, he'll choose a side, and then we'll just start promoting the pawn. ये जो important squares है ना, b8, b7, b6. See, our king is protecting those squares. Those are the key squares. Also, when the pawn reaches the sixth rank, there are five key squares. तो वो की स्क्वायर्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है इसमें. यहाँ पर हमने ऑपोजिशन दिया, की स्क्वायर्स को कैप्चर किया, एंड वी कैन प्रमोट आवर पॉन.
Yeah, so moving on, now we have this position, and यहाँ पे if you can just explain the concept of opposition, because you know you guys must have heard, आपने सुना होगा, whenever we talk about end games you must have heard this term again and again, opposition. But exactly होता क्या है opposition? Let us understand what exactly is opposition.
Yeah. So here basically, it's not important. यहाँ पर opposition है because it is white to play, right? White can just promote the pawn to f7. Now king will have no square but to go on e7. Once the king goes to e7, हम king g7 लेकर जाएंगे, protecting the f8 square, and then we are making a queen. But as you said, what is opposition? Opposition is when the two kings are facing each other like this. Okay. Now opposition can be short or distant. Short is when there's only they are only one square apart. But they can be three or five squares apart as well. The one who gives the opposition wins. For example, now if here it would be black to play in this particular position, and he plays his king to g8, then he's kind of winning this one. The one who gives the opposition wins the game. Q, can you can you show that king
Yeah,
if it
no,
is black to play?
yeah, we have that in the next position. But you know what, मैं ये कैसे याद करता हूँ, that when there are odd
Hmm.
number of squares in between the two kings and it is your opponent's turn, then you have the opposition. For example, over here, that then he has the opposition. So over here what I understand is that the kings are or are like like they are distant to each other, and it is our move. And how I know that this is winning for white is because when the pawn is on the sixth rank, like over here our pawn is on the sixth rank, and when we are pushing our pawn on the seventh rank and this is not coming with check, so over here it's not coming with check, so our pawn is going to promote. For example, now the king will come here, and as you said, king g7, and now we promote, and we make a queen. Now in this same position, this is the literally exactly the same position, and it is your turn. So over here you are said to have the opposition because there is, like, as you said, there should be odd number of rows between the two kings. So यहाँ पे there is one, there's a gap of one row, and यहाँ पे आपकी चाल है. So that means you have the opposition. Like for example, over here you
Correct.
put the king in front of the white king, and now if he pushes the pawn, this is coming with check.
With a check, right?
So that's how I learned it, like in a very amateur way, or जैसे, I don't know what this method is called. I don't even know if this has a name or not. But this is how I understand that when the pawn is on the sixth rank, वो promote हो सकता है कि नहीं, is that if it comes to the seventh rank with a check, then you are safe. And if it does not come with a check, for example, in the previous position, like
Yeah,
in this position, when we push the pawn, यहाँ पे check के साथ नहीं आया, so white is winning, so black is not safe over here.
correct. Yeah, this is actually a very good trick. Ki if it is coming with a check or not. Nice.
So yeah, now in this position again, we have learned about opposition. So over here,
Correct.
many people, यहाँ पे हमें pawn banana है queen. Our ultimate aim is to take the pawn here. So now you might think, you know what, like we want to get a king closer to this square. So if you play the move king to b6 over here, this is a draw because हमने अभी just समझाया that over here there's again, let's see, once when you're putting the king forward, now the gap is there's a, the gap
One
becomes odd.
square
So
distance.
now there's a one square distance, and over here it is black ki chal hai, and black is able to get his king over here, and he's getting the opposition because now the kings are directly in front of each other. So
Yeah.
so this is a
The
draw
one who gives
because,
the opposition wins.
yeah, and यहाँ पे
Hmm.
once again when you push the pawn, ये check के साथ आ रहा है. So when it comes with the check, it is a draw. But यहाँ पे if you play king a6, so now it is black's move over here with the two kings opposite to each other. So this is what I know about opposition. I mean, you can correct me at any
No,
point.
absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. और मैंने खुद ने एक नई चीज सीखी. If it comes with a check, then And then it's a draw. If it doesn't come with a check, then
Yeah,
you win.
because when you play
Very
king
nice.
e6,
Good trick.
now the thing is that when he goes king b8, now you play king
We have
d6, and now it is black's move. It is not your move. Like पहले आपका move था, so you had to push the pawn. Now, like see, if the king goes here, it is important you don't push the pawn here because then it becomes a stalemate, right? So
correct.
we look at
Yeah.
it later, but if it goes here, seventh rank without a check, so you're promoting. And of course, if you come over here, then we learned the second in the second example हमने एक technique सीखा था. Now you take the key square, right? This is known as the key square, right?
Key square.
So yeah,
Yeah.
now you take the key square, king is 7. Now you just move the king, and now the pawn is going to promote.
Yeah. True. So the one who takes the opposition, क्या होता है उसमें? The opponent's king needs to decide to choose a side, right? He goes to one side, you go to the other side way around. He goes to the C file, you go A7. Here not possible, but in general. तो वो एक साइड राइट जाता है, हम लेफ्ट जाकर we control the squares, we go forward like that. Yeah,
So
nice.
let's move
Okay,
on. So
sure.
yeah, in this position, आप समझाओ इसमें opposition कैसे लेते हैं?
Yeah. तो यहाँ पर now this is called as strangulation. यहाँ पर white has a chance. If we go king f5 here as white, so black needs to go to g8. He has to go to g8. अगर वो यहाँ पर f8 चला जाता है, फिर हम king f6 जाएंगे and we are giving the opposition. Again the same thing. The one who gives the opposition wins. और your trick as well. फिर हम लोग check के साथ नहीं promote करेंगे. His king will be on e8. तो
Yeah.
यहाँ पर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, उसको g8 जाना है. We go f5. Yeah, he goes g8. Now you should go to g6. So you don't go f6, otherwise he'll come f8. He will give you the opposition. But now you go g6. Then
Yeah,
he
so
needs to
over
come
here
to
again the
f8.
same concept, that if you try to take the king closer to the square, and then black now plays king f8, now the both the kings are opposite to each other and it is your move. So he has the
Yeah,
opposition. So it is important
correct.
that black, the only trick that black has is to go king g8, hoping that we go king f6. But अगर आपने सीखा है chess, then आप जाओगे king g6 and you have opposition,
e6.
because now if he goes here, now once again you take the opposition, and if he goes here then you just push and promote, and if he goes
Promote.
here, now you push the
You
pawn to
still
the seventh
push.
rank without a check. So now this is just going to promote.
Win. Mhm.
So I think, like in all the examples we saw, it was all about taking opposition.
Yeah.
Now this
Yeah.
is a position and it is white to move. And आप बताओ, is this a draw or is black winning?
Here, if white plays king h1, it is winning.
I mean, this is a draw, right?
I mean,
Because
it winning for white. White. It's a draw. Yeah, winning for white. Yeah.
and
तो यहाँ पर कुछ नहीं है उसके पास करने के लिए. What can he do if he
yeah,
goes
so I mean,
G?
if you can just
Hmm.
explain the difference between why king g1 is losing and why king h1 is saving.
Yeah. So if we go king G1, what can white do? What can black do? He has to go away. अगर वो पीछे जाता है तो we'll take
Yeah,
the
and
control of
once
G2
again the pawn is coming to the seventh rank or the second rank over here without a check. And अगर ये
without
last
a
rank
check.
होता, if this was the rook file, then white would have been saved. But the only problem is that the king has a square over here,
Correct.
and
Yeah.
then black just
So
pushes and then you just make a queen and you lose. So in this position, it is important to go king h1. Now, one important point is that had this been, because this pawn is in the knight's no, the knight's file, had this been in any, like had the pawn been on any other file in the center of the board,
same.
black is completely winning, because black would have just
You have one
pushed
extra
the king,
file.
and he would have taken the key squares as you call it. But because this is the knight's no the knight's file and we are on the edge of the board, now if you play king f2, this is a stalemate because the king has no square.
No
So
squares to go.
yeah, so that's why I said that had this been any other, like had this pawn been on any other file apart from the knight's file, then I think black was winning. But because this is the knight's file, you go king h1, and now there is no way how black can, how black can advance. Like if you go g2, this again comes with a check, so king g1 and king g3 is a draw over here.
Is a stalemate. Yeah. So यहाँ पर after H you don't have an extra file. King has no squares. That's when it's a stalemate. We are winning. Yeah.
Yeah. Now let's come to this position. Here it is
Okay.
white to move, and this is actually a very tricky one because once again your pawn is in the knight square, but over here you are winning. Can you just explain the difference that why this is winning for white?
Yeah. Again, the same thing. Since it's a knight file and the king is at the edge of the board, you go king g6, your opponent is forced to give you the opposition. And now you go king to h6,
No, so over
right?
here, no, so this is actually, like this is the opposite. Over here, when you go king to g6, black takes the opposition, but over here you are still winning because over here you go king h6. You
h6.
let black take the opposition, but now you push the pawn, and now the king has to come
And
here and
that's it.
you promote. And now once again, because this is the knight's file, had this been on any other file, you could have just pushed the pawn and you could have been winning in any case over
Yeah.
here. But again, जैसे हमने देखा in the last example, the king does not have the extra file over here. And over here, king f6, it is still winning. But the problem over here, if you can just explain that how you can get back to the same position, that king f6 is
Yeah.
not the most accurate move over here.
So he'll go king h7. And we have to repeat. You give the opposition king
Yeah,
f7,
and
king
now we
h8.
come back to the same position. And over here, any other move apart from king g6, you just end up drawing because, like, let's say if you again go king f6, then you can just end up repeating the position.
Repetition.
So the only way over here is to go king g6 to allow black to take the opposition. No, I mean this is
Yeah.
I think one of the like क्या बोलते हैं इसको exceptions, because हमने तो सीखा है कि when you want to win an endgame, you have to take opposition. But
Yeah.
in this knight spawn,
Nice.
like no, when you have a knight spawn over here, you are actually giving up back the opposition. Like you are actually saying, you know what, just play king g8 and you take the opposition. So
Hmm.
I mean, how do you differentiate
True.
between these things? Like because this is a knight spawn, so you give away the opposition.
तो नाइट स्पॉन के लिए और रुक स्पॉन के लिए देर आर डिफरेंट रूल्स सेंटर पॉन्स के लिए देर आर डिफरेंट रूल्स ऑल्सो द पॉन ऑन द सेवेंथ रैंक देर आर डिफरेंट रूल्स सो द टेक्निक is important only if you also night pawn there will be only two pawns right so wo exceptions we have to remember
So now I'll come to this distant opposition. Just say, like all this time we were looking at opposition when there was just when the two kings were separated by just one square. But now we have three squares, and opposition works for any odd number of
odd
squares, one,
numbers
three, or even five, right?
yeah
So over here, how does
so this
white
is
take the opposition? I mean, if you play a move like king b2, because you are saying, what, black ka pawn aa raha hai, I need to get my king, to try and stop the pawn.
closer to
So if you are in a
hmm.
hurry and you say, what, I play king b2, but now black plays king
He's gonna
b4,
go
and now black has the opposition because now both the kings are opposite and it is your move. So what do you
correct
do? I mean, no, if you go here, black goes here, and black has the opposition. Now whatever you play, if you go king d2, he just goes king
he's
b3.
gonna go
He
opposite
takes the
side
the key squares because let's say you go here. Now he can just play king b2 and he's occupied
king
all the
b2
key squares. So over here, it is
correct
important that you put your king on b1. There are odd number of squares in between, and you see that both the kings are opposite to each other, and it is your opponent's turn. So you are said to be having the opposition. Now, no matter what black plays, this is a draw. Am I right?
Yeah, if he plays king b4, you go king b2, he goes king c4, you go king c2. जहां भी वो जाएगा हम
Yeah.
लोग
So
अपोजिशन
so this is
हम
like the
देंगे
same
उसको एज
position.
राइट
So we basically come to the same position, but now the only difference is it is not your move, but it is black's move.
इट इज
So
ब्लैक्स मूव
so yeah, now if he goes there, you go come here. If he pushes the pawn, then you just sidestep. Again, you don't go king b1 because then you give him the opposition. So you just sidestep your king, and if he pushes again you don't go king b1, but you go king c1. If he pushes this, now you again take the opposition. It is his move, and once again this is coming with a check, so that you know that this is a
दैट्स राइट
draw.
या
So I hope this concept is clear to everyone who is watching it, that why you go king b1 and not, let's say, a move like king a2 or king b2.
सो बेसिकली सबको सिर्फ ऑड नंबर्स याद रखना है 1 3 एंड 5 अगर हम लोग if it's our turn and we can give an opposition taking our king one square apart, three squares apart, or five squares apart from the opponent's king, then we are definitely winning it. Also remember कि हम if he comes, if he is facing us, we are also going to face him. Every time you have to face the king to to be in an opposition. Okay, cool.
Like now over here, समझाइए आप opposition इसमें how do you take
Yeah, तो
advantage of
अभी
opposition?
already दोनों king both the kings are facing each other. अगर हमने side, if we give him the side, he's gonna come forward. Let's say अगर आप king h5 जाते हो, he'll come king f6. तो यहाँ पर you have an extra move, you have a tempo. Since both the kings are facing each other and it is our turn, what we'll do is we'll push the pawn up, right? We'll go pawn g4. Now he takes a side. Let's say he goes to f7 or h7, anywhere. We are going to go to the opposite side, king h6. Correct. अगर वो अभी opposition दे रहा है हमको, since he is not facing, if he goes king f6, अगर वो भी
Now
हमको
you just
opposition
push.
दे रहा है, we don't, yeah, we just push.
You just
No need to
push,
worry
and now
about
I
that.
think the king has to go back. And again, you push this pawn. अगर king यहाँ पे जाता है, then king h7 is winning. And if he goes here, then you are just pushing it to the seventh rank
The
without a check, so you're just winning.
without.
So over here, I mean, it was just important that you just like of course over here everything is winning, but the most accurate way to win is that you push the pawn, you transfer the move to black side. Now whatever black plays, you have the opposition. Like even something like this, this also works. Like this is like very simple. That you just take the opposition. Now no matter where the king goes, like let's say if he goes here, now you again take the opposition, and it's the same thing again.
Yeah. Yeah, but if for easy, if the viewers are beginner, तो easy way remember करने का, don't just complicate it. You take that extra tempo और वो चूज करता है कोई भी साइड. अभी हम नहीं करेंगे उसके किंग को फेस because we are going forward and we will be going to the opposite side.
Yeah, and
So
and
one
one more
technique,
important thing is that over here if he goes king h8, you know you go king g6 now,
king
or you can even
g6.
push g6.
Correct.
Like and now we come to the same position that we have seen over here, that
Yeah.
and like I was just trying to see that that ये knight spawn है, so whether I don't know if black has any tricks over here or not, but in this position somehow black has no tricks, that something, no tricky stuff over here. So yeah, now we come
Yeah.
to the final part, that is the rook spawn. And rook spawn is always a draw, but the only way how you can promote a rook pawn is by the first concept, that is that the pawn has to promote without the support of the king. So over here of
Correct.
course that you go king h1, black pushes his pawn, this does not come with a check, but because there is no extra file, so this is always going to be a draw.
Yeah.
And
It
similarly
is
over
going
here,
to be.
and this is like another example of the king's pawn where black seems that black has the opposition, but because of the lack of an extra file, I think the most important part over here is to control these two squares. So when you play the
Yeah.
move to, yeah, so when you get the king to either of these two squares, when you get the king to the bishop file, you are controlling these two squares. And in a king pawn endgame where the pawn is in the rook's file, if you're if you are able to control these two squares, then you are always going to be able to hold. So for example,
Yeah.
if he gets the king here, you
No,
just
I
keep.
think you should be, sorry, you should be able to control C2 and C1. मतलब opponent's king should not be able to come to C2 and C1. Your king should be either on B2, B1, C2, C1, ऐसे करके. If he can come to C2 and C1, he'll never leave those two squares, और हमारा king will be stuck in the corner. No moves to go to. It will be a stalemate.
Yeah, so basically if you're black, then you would want your king to control these two squares. And if you are
Yeah,
white, जैसे यहाँ पे it's white's move, so if you play a move like this, then you are losing, because then black plays this move
he
and now
comes to
black is
B2.
controlling these two squares. So over here it is the only move for white is to play king c1. And although it seems that black has the opposition, but you just keep rotating your king on these two squares, and
Yeah. You
this
basically
becomes a
put his
stalemate.
king into the cage, in his own cage, where he can't go out of, and he cannot vacate the square where he wants to promote his pawn.
Right.
Putting it in the cage. Yeah.
Yeah, so guys, that was all we had for for King's Pawn Endgame, and this was like the first video in learning endgames, where we started from absolute scratch, like King versus King Pawn, which I believe is the absolute basics, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
The
mean,
rule of square.
so yeah,
Basic.
thank you so much, Raksha ji. I mean, this was really insightful, and I'm sure that to all the people who are watching this, they like if they watch till here, they will surely they'll go back having learned something.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, so Thank you so much.